Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Today's show is going to be a little different. I want to take some time to talk about some current legislation, possibly upcoming legislation, and talk about what it really is, how concerned you should be, and what does it mean for you? Now, the reason I want to do this is there's been a lot of fear mongering going on again right now. Got to stir up that fear buying, that panic buying, and get people scared and get them to give money to your cash cow organizations, etc. And I want to actually spend some time actually talking about what they're saying, whether it's true, what the bills mean, etc. The two bills I want to talk about are HR8 and HR1446. And I want to take them one at a time here because I want to address each one of them individually. First, let's talk about House Resolution 8 for the 2021 117th Congress. Well, this is a bill that has been passed in the House before. It was written by the same person in 2019, went through committee, passed on the floor in a vote of the members, passed pretty overwhelmingly, actually. Pretty much along party lines, but pretty overwhelmingly. But then it died in the Senate. Never even came to the floor. So it died. Now it's back. And same name, HR8, same person who wrote it. It's got a bunch of people signed on to it. It's got like 60 sponsors or co-sponsors, I think, something in that range. All the usual suspects, the Nadlers, the Sheila Jackson Lees, etc. But let's talk about this bill and what it does. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is something people have been saying about both bills that I'm going to speak about. And that is this whole idea that they're going to be passed without going through committee. And then they might not even have to go through the Senate. There's some parliamentary thing they're going to do in the House of Representatives that they're going to get it passed by just a yes-no vote. And then they're going to do something through executive action or some other weird thing. And it's going to be passed and we're going to have to deal with it. No, that is not going to happen. Don't worry about any of that. That is garbage. It is going to have to go through the House and its normal procedures, and it's going to have to go through the Senate and the normal procedures. So this is something we're going to be able to watch go through. It's not going to be something that's passed in the middle of the middle of the night, like what went on in New York. The federal Congress is just not set up for that. So isn't going to happen. So it's going to be passed normally. That's true of both these bills. So let's get that out of the way right away. But now let's move on to this bill and what it actually is. Well, like I said, this bill has passed the House before, but failed in the Senate, never even got to the floor, and died. This is a bill that will basically make it to where you have to have a background check anytime you transfer a firearm to basically a non-relative. And that's something we're fighting here in Washington. With 1639, that passed here. We can't do private sales anymore, or at least we can't technically do private sales. Private sales are still very common here. They happen all the time, and law enforcement knows it, and they look the other way because they really have no way of enforcing this law. And they said that when it was getting passed, there's no way we'll be able to enforce this, yet most of the police groups supported it, but they admitted there's no way they can enforce it. So it doesn't really get enforced here, but it's something we've been living under for a while. So I want to talk to you about how is it going to affect you and what's it actually going to do. Well, basically, if you buy your guns from a gun shop, and that's the only way you buy, you're like, I don't want to buy someone else's problems. I just like to buy new. Well, if that's you, this isn't going to be a concern of yours because you don't buy used. You don't buy private. If you buy guns from just family members, like you'll say, I don't mind buying a private gun, but it's just if it's a family member. Well, then this probably won't affect you either because blood relatives, family members, blah, blah, blah. There are some exceptions we'll talk about later that this bill allows for. But let's say you see a gun on a forum. You decide, hey, I want to buy that gun from this guy, and I want to go buy it for him. Used to be here in Washington, and it is still the case in most places. You can go meet these people in a parking lot, buy the gun. You can have them come to your house, buy the gun if you want to do that. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you can. I've had many people come to my place of business and buy a gun from them. Done that quite often, back when we could in the state of Washington. But now we can't. And this is what this bill would do to the rest of the country. If you wanted to transfer a firearm between one citizen and another, you'd have to go to an FFL, have them run a background check before you did that. Which a lot of people do anyway, because that way they're free of liability. Because if you sell a gun to someone, turns out they're a prohibited person, and the government can make a case that you should have been suspicious and thought they might be a prohibited person, you could be on the hook for things. So I've known people for a long time that do that anyway, but that's fine. That's on them. That's their decision as a free citizen. They can do that. But having it mandated by the government is something else. That's why I've never approved of it here in Washington, and I don't approve of it now on a federal level. Because for one, I don't like background checks. I don't think they do any good. I've never seen one iota of evidence that they have made any difference for our society, period. And plus, I'm a firm believer that any free person who hasn't been mentally adjudicated, which it's usually pretty easy to tell someone's been mentally adjudicated if you meet them in person, and most of those people usually don't get out of their special living conditions to go out and buy guns anyway, but even if they did, such is the risk of freedom. But like I said, never seen any evidence that background checks do anything, so expanding them to every sale, it doesn't do anything for crime, and it's not meant to. What these laws are actually meant to do is provide a paper trail for every gun, and therefore a de facto registry, because they'll always know who has what gun. Because if there has to be a paper trail for every gun, and they come to you like, "Oh, this gun was used in a crime. Why do you not have this gun? Did you commit the crime? Whatever." And you say, "No, I sold it to this person." They'll be like, "Okay, well, where's the 4473 that has the information for that person?" So that way, they always kind of know who has what gun. And it's not really for tracking down crimes. It's mainly for just being able to at any time pull up serial number and see how many guns a person has, or pull which person owns which gun. You know what I'm talking about. It's a de facto backdoor registry. So that's what this law is about. Now, as far as how it will affect you in your everyday life, like I said, if you just buy from dealers, won't affect you at all. If you buy from private citizens, it will stop you from doing that if you're someone who, I follow the letter of the law. If not, probably won't stop you from doing it then either. Because like I say, no shortage of private sales here in Washington since it passed. But it is a heinous bill because, like I said, don't like background checks, and I definitely don't like a de facto registry. Now, how upset should you get about this? Well, I mean, you should be upset that some people even suggest such a thing. Any politician that suggests such a thing, as far as I'm concerned, should get a strike against them and, unconstitutional behavior. And then once you get enough strikes, you're out of there. But I wouldn't be too worried about this because if you look at the places like govtracker.us and other places that rank bills' likelihood of being passed into law, this bill has a 4% chance. So as far as panicking, something like that, I wouldn't be doing it. I'd be aware of it, but I wouldn't be too concerned about it. And I definitely wouldn't be panicking, thinking you have to buy something, because this bill is not going to affect whether you can get an AR or anything. If you want to order 50 ARs the day after it's passed from your dealer, you can still do it. Won't change a thing about it. You're still buying it from your dealer. There's no reason to run out and mass buy things or hoard anything. And right now, there's no legal battle against it, so there's no reason to rush out and send all your money to gun groups so that they can fight this heinous thing. Right now, there's nothing for them to fight. There's no lawsuit. It's just a pending bill. And if it never passes, there'll never be nothing for them to fight. If you want to fight one, look into the 1639 in Washington. That is an ongoing battle. And right now, the federals are watching that, too, to see how that ends up in the courts. Because, what good is it to pass it on the federal level if it's already been declared unconstitutional? So we're fighting that battle here already. So basically, what this would do is make everybody else be fighting the same battle we're fighting in Washington. And I wouldn't wish that on you, but it's really not going to affect you in many ways. It's very bad. And we would definitely fight it, and we would definitely hope to win. And I think we could win. I think this would definitely be considered an infringement in our private rights, our rights as citizens to privately transfer our owned property to people. And maybe if it gets passed on a federal level, that'll bring some other states into the battle, and we'll get it onto a federal battle, and it'll get to the Supreme Court maybe faster than it will from Washington. So if it does get passed, maybe that'll happen, hopefully. But the chances of it getting passed right now, very slim. Like I said, they rated it like a 4%. And I've noticed they're usually pretty accurate. Unless they get up to like the 50-50, things usually fail. Sometimes something that's 40% chance will pass, but not often. It's usually got to be 50 or higher before it will ever really pass. Just from my own experiences reading their blogs and stuff. So this is a bill I wouldn't be freaking out about. And believe me, it's not a new battle. It's a battle we're already fighting here in Washington, and we'd be prepared to fight on a national level too if we had to. But I don't think it's going to pass. And as far as like, what should you be doing right now? Is there anything you need to buy or a group you need to send money to? No, you don't need to send money to anyone. You don't need to stock up on anything, because the only thing this would affect if it passes is your ability to buy from an individual. It's closing that what they like to call the gun show loophole, which isn't a loophole at all. It is basically a fact that private citizens in most states can transfer property between themselves without the government being involved. That was never a loophole. That was something intentionally in the law, and they're trying to close that right now. They're trying to make it look like they're closing a loophole when really they're just taking away one of your rights and sticking the government's nose in your business in another way. But like I said, right now, be aware of it, pay attention to it. It isn't even out of committee yet, hasn't passed the House yet, and definitely hasn't passed the Senate. That's where it's going to fail again. I would be willing to bet my left testicle that it will fail in the Senate. And you might be like, wow, that makes you pretty sure. I'm like, I don't really have much use for my left testicle anymore. They just kind of get in the way now. But still, pretty confident it's not going to pass. But like I said, be aware of it. Know what it is. Be prepared if we do have to fight this. And once comes a time where there's actually a lawsuit about this, believe me, I'll be one of the first people to let you know where to send money and who to contact or how to fight or join the fight. But right now, there's really nothing you need to do. This is legislation, not a lawsuit, and it's not even legislation that's even been out of committee yet. I have no doubt it will get out of committee and it will pass the House, but I don't think it'll go any further than that. So unless it passes the House and it's waiting for a presidential signature, then we'll gear up for the big lawsuit. But right now, there's really not much you can do. There's nothing you're going to tell the politicians that they don't already know. There's no voices that they haven't already heard. There's nothing like that. I've talked to you about that before. So sit back, be aware. Let's see where it goes. And if we have to, let's be ready to fight. All right, now I want to move on to the next bill we will be talking about tonight. And that is also a House resolution. It is House Resolution 1446, 1446. Now, this is called the Enhanced Background Check Act of 2021. Now, what this bill does and how it affects you is that right now, under federal law, if you have a NICS check done, they don't respond in 72 hours, or actually 3 business days. If they don't respond, no answer is given. An FFL can then decide to transfer you the firearm. They can say, okay, we sent in your NICS check. They didn't respond. It's been 3 business days. Here's your gun. They have every legal right to do that. This bill would change that. A lot of people always like to call this the Charleston loophole, the anti-gunners, because they're like, oh, it's this loophole that if you don't get a background check back in enough time, you get to take the gun. Oh, I never intended that. No, that's not a loophole. That time limit is there on purpose because it prevents the government from stalling you indefinitely on something you have a right to do. Because if tomorrow the government said, wow, we want to stop all gun sales and put gun shops out of business, oops, our computers are down at NICS and it's going to be 3 weeks before we get them fixed, so no gun sales for the next 3 weeks. And they effectively pretty much run out every gun dealer in business today. Everyone that's doing business would be out of business in a couple of weeks. So that's what that prevents. It's not a loophole. It's actually there for a reason. Well, what they want to do is lengthen it to 10 days. And then they also want to require the person buying the gun, if they haven't gotten a response, to actually file a petition. And then once they file the petition, then 10 business days from the time that petition is received, then the FFL can give them the gun if they have no response. Hopefully you get a response faster than that, but if not, 10 days later, the gun's yours. So how will this affect you? Well, if you're someone who's every time you buy a gun, you don't get a response, then this would affect you. You'd have to be waiting longer. I've never not gotten a response. on one of my background checks. I've either gotten a delay or a denial, but it has come back within 3 to 4 days usually. Now, here in Washington, we actually have to wait longer than the 3 days because we have a state requirement that takes longer than the NICS requirement. So that doesn't even affect us. But if you use NICS, if you're in a state that uses NICS, it would affect you if that's the only requirement they have. If your state has higher requirements than that, well, then you weigh this against what your state already does. Right now in the state of Washington, it's not going to change much here. But let's say you're someone who's denied. Under the way the law is written now, if your state just uses NICS and they don't respond in 3 days, you can take your gun. Now, here's a little reality check. Unless you are very close with your FFL, I know of hardly any FFLs that will transfer a gun to you without a response. It's just not worth the risk to them. Your one sale. If they let you have that gun and then the NICS comes back the next day denied and you commit a crime with it, they are in a lot of hot water. Their license is on the line. So usually they won't transfer to you unless you've gotten a background checker or not. So as long as NICS is working properly and you get instant responses like NICS usually does, or a response within 3 days like it normally does, this wouldn't affect you at all. If you get delayed beyond 3 days, well, now this will affect you if you're good friends with the dealer who would actually turn it over to you after just 3 days. So it can affect you, but it's not very likely to affect you. The real danger of this law is it's stepping closer and closer to giving them the ability to indefinitely deny people. That's what's really dangerous about this law. It's taking that 3-day period, turning it into a 10+ day period, and then eventually they'll be like, well, 10 days ain't enough. How about 20 days? How about 30? How about 60? And as long as NICS is functioning properly for most people, that won't be a problem. It would be a very rare occasion where someone doesn't have a response after 3 days. It's a very rare occasion now. Happens, out of every 150 through 200, maybe 1,000 guns a dealer says. I've heard different things from different dealers. But it's not that common. And most of them don't turn them over after 3 days anyway. They wait for a final response. So it's not going to be a big factor as far as changing how we as people buy things or anything like that. And will it affect anything you can buy? No, it will not affect anything you can buy. You can still buy ARs. You can still buy handguns. You can still buy anything. Anything that's legal in your state, you'll still buy. This won't change it. And if you're not a prohibited person, you should get a NICS check. If you're not someone who gets delayed all the time, shouldn't change anything for you. If you live in a state that has a waiting period of 10 days or whatever anyway, probably won't have much of a change on you either. But if you live in a state that usually you get it, within 3 days, I guess it could affect you if now you have to wait beyond the 3 days. That's if you have a dealer that gives it to you. But that's just not that likely, and that's not the case for most people. Now, I know some dealers that would turn it over to me in 3 days, but I usually wouldn't ask them to. Because I'd be like, I'll just wait till it comes back in. So I don't see it affecting a lot of people the way it is. But like I said, the problem with this bill and the reason you should be upset about this bill is it is one step closer to them being able to deny people indefinitely. And once they get to that stage where they can deny people indefinitely, all they got to do, like I said, is like, oops, the computers blew up, or all of our people are out sick. And they can really fuck over the industry, especially the mom and pop shops that require stuff to be going out the door. So this gives the government way too much power, and it takes the onus off of them to be honest in the process. If you're not denied, don't deny you. If there's no reason to delay you, don't delay you. With this new law, they could just be like, delay, 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 and think we got plenty of time to deal with it. I like the fact that they know, well, here's the form, clock's ticking. We got 72 hours. That's what I like about it. I like the fact that they know they've only got so much time. If they want to find something out about you, they better do it in that 72 hours. Because like I said, I don't think they should be doing it at all. Just like with the first bill, don't think they should be doing it at all. Background checks are stupid. They're all about control. They're all about tracking. They're all about the government knowing things they have no right to know. So don't agree with it, period. But like I said, what should you be buying? Nothing. This won't affect your ability to buy anything. What group should you be giving money to right now to defend against this? Nothing. It's not even out of committee yet. It's just been introduced to committee. And I believe the chances of this one passing were, I believe, either 5 or 6%. Still, not what I'd call good chances. I'm surprised that this bill has more chances than the other one, because the other one's what I've been warning about for a very long time, universal background checks. I've always said, if they can get that onto the floor, I don't think they'll have that big an issue passing that. That could pass. You could get a couple you'd probably lose a couple Democrats, but you could get a few Republicans. I think there's probably at least 1 or 2, possibly 3 Democrats that would vote against either of these two bills. But you might get 3 or 4 Republican, or excuse me, 1 to 2 to 3 Democrats that would vote against it. But you might get 3 or 4 Republicans that would vote for it. So it's a danger. But right now, I don't think it has much chance, because right now I don't think anyone's breaking ranks anywhere right now, because the Republicans are trying to keep themselves together. And the Democrats know there's a couple of their people in the Senate that won't vote for it. So whether it would come to the floor or not, kind of unlikely it would even get to the floor. Passing would probably be even a tougher thing. I think under normal circumstances, it would have more of a chance. But right now, I just don't think it does, because like now I think things are too divided, and people are walking on eggshells in the Republican Party, too much so to transfer over to the Democrat side on gun control. So not really worried about either of them. Don't think you should panic about either of them. You definitely shouldn't get yourself in a tizzy and go around acting like an idiot. You shouldn't be scared. You shouldn't be fearful, angry, because these don't warrant that. In the unlikely event they get as far as being on the floor of the Senate, we'll reevaluate. But right now, there's no reason to panic. There's no reason to make ourselves look like fools. There's no reason to run around calling people names or acting like we got to buy up ammo and guns and got to be ready to fight. This is not Civil War stuff, which is not going to happen anyway, because most people who talk about Civil War can't even be bothered to get off the freaking couch. But I wouldn't worry about this. As far as both of these bills are concerned, the bipartisan background check law, which is the universal background check law, which is something I've been warning about for a long time, don't think it's got a lot of chance of passing this time, but still pay attention. And as far as panicking, no. The enhanced background check law, well, pay attention. Does it have much chance of passing? Not really. Would it affect a lot of people? Not really. Neither of these bills are really going to affect a lot of people, but that's not the point. I've made a point many, many times in this chat or this video format we're in here, this fake world we're in right here, of saying you don't just fight when it hurts you. You fight when it's an infringement, period. Because if you only worry about the things that hurt you, that's what FUDs do. And that's why they're dangerous, because they won't stand by you if it doesn't affect them. As a community, we have to stand by every group that gets disenfranchised, be it poor people, minorities, etc. We don't get to play that game of, well, it doesn't matter because the only people this will affect is poor people or minorities or people who want this gun, which I don't think anyone needs to have that gun anyway. Doesn't matter. We don't just fight when it hurts us. We fight on principle of the Second Amendment. And that's what both of these things are right now. They're basically principle battles because I don't think they're going to get passed. And if they do get passed, they won't hurt a lot of people, but they'll hurt the Second Amendment. And if they do get passed, I think that gives us even more of a platform to take these things to the federal court, to the Supreme Court, and get them torn down once and fucking for all, so we don't have to have them hanging over our heads all the time. And I know that's an optimistic view of it, but, sometimes you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. Sometimes things got to get bad before they get better. And this could be that kind of a situation. But right now, it's not that far along. Right now, it's just something to be aware of. Like I said, something to take heed of, nothing to get angry about, nothing to get worried about, nothing to go panic buying about, and nothing to be shoving your money to the federal gun group money hoarders who like to decide which battles are profitable. Wait till there's an actual battle. Wait till there's an actual court fight. And then decide who you think is fighting it in the most sincere way and get behind them. But until then, like I said, let's just keep our eyes open, pay attention to what's going on, and we'll all be okay in the end. And with that being said, I've gone way over my normal time for the show today, so 2 special edition shows in a row, and we might have a third one tomorrow, by the way. If not, then it'll be probably Friday we'll have another special show. But I want to sign off tonight as usual by saying, as far as the state of the world today is concerned, it is what it is. There are challenges. There are things to be aware of. But they're not things to panic over. We shouldn't be driven by fear. We shouldn't be driven by anger. When you're driven by those things, you're weak. You're predictable. You're easily manipulated. So let's not do that. Because like I said, it is what it is. But if we keep our heads about us, we keep ourselves on the right track, we ignore the fear mongers that want to manipulate us, we ignore the profiteers that want us to panic buy, and we ignore the people who basically make their living off of making us feel like the sky is falling. If we ignore those people, what things will be in the future, I promise you, for the gun community, is better.